Welcome to Movies That Matter, the podcast about recent films going above and beyond the call of box office returns to boldly explore a social issue affecting people's lives. I'm Nicole Finari, and with me today is...
Adam Perry.
Welcome back, Adam.
Thank you.
What movie are we overanalyzing this week?
Yesterday.
Directed by Danny Boyle and written by Richard Curtis, Yesterday stars Himesh Patel as a musician who, after an accident, finds himself as the only person who remembers the Beatles, and he becomes famous, taking credit for writing and performing the song, all the while shying away from the love of his best friend, played by Lily James. So, what did you think?
You know, I liked it, and I was really trying to hate it. I thought it looked horrible. I like the Beatles. That doesn't really move the needle for me. And I ended up being pretty charmed by the movie. I thought it was good. What can I say?
That's really funny, because I had pretty much the exact same reaction. I was like, I'm trying so hard to hate this movie, but at the end of the day... But then the problem becomes, the more you try to think about this. So the problem with the movie then becomes, the more you start to talk about it, the more it completely falls apart upon analysis. So
I didn't think it really needed analysis. Like, obviously there's going to be continuity problems with this kind of high concept. And I was just kind of like, who cares? You know?
Yeah. So... I'll give our standard, regular listeners of the show know we spoil everything, so if you're new to the show, we're going to spoil all of the things, because otherwise this isn't going to be very fun to talk about.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of, jokes, gags in the movie where it isn't just the Beatles that aren't in this world, and so, certain things have disappeared along with the Beatles. Big things.
Yeah.
Like Coca-Cola, which was when I was like, well, I just don't want to live in a world that doesn't have Coca.
Yeah.
Also...
It was funny, though, when he asked, I mean, it was on the Ed Sheeran's airplane or whatever, he's like, can I get some Coke? And she's like, excuse me?
Yeah, which I feel like if this was really the music industry, that would not have been her reaction.
Oh, no. Ed Sheeran's doing Coke on that plane.
Although I did so for all of the gags that kind of didn't come off, the one where Oasis can exist because it's basically a Beatles knockoff.
That was hilarious. I loved, by the way those internet search scenes were done.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of like your vintage Danny Boyle sort of moment, with the crazy music and the quick cutting of him just rushing to the computer, which I was kind of worried about the movie being kind of vanilla looking from the trailer, that it would look kind of like an anonymously made film. And it really did have a lot of his kind of signature flourishes, I thought, which was good. And that was definitely one of them. I thought, so I'm praying, please show a picture of an oasis in the desert when he searches for this. And sure enough, I saw it coming, and it was great anyway.
Yeah, but then, in terms of plot points that don't hang together, it becomes problematic because he meets Ellie.
Yep, I was wondering about that.
Playing Wonderwall, and that's how, she first approaches him, and it's okay, well you just wrote that out of history. So, I mean, you're going to consider fan wink, okay, maybe he picked a different song.
Yeah.
But...
there's just, little things that you, it doesn't really matter, to me at least, that the movie didn't address that. It's you can just think about it, like we just did. It was something different, and move on. You don't need screen time wasted with, I don't know, an alternate performance or some BS from when they were kids.
I just don't know.
High
so
schoolers.
I want to dig into that in a second. But I'm glad you brought this up. So ironically or not, one of the previous podcasts you did was another Danny Boyle movie, which was, of course, was Trainspotting 2. And oh, by the way, I'm sitting there and I'm like, the initial shot of John Lennon was good, but then that's as the scene played out, you could start to see the prosthetic stuff, and I was like, oh, he did not have Begbie play John Lennon.
That's funny. Was that him?
Yeah, absolutely. Robert Carlyle.
I had no idea.
It was for sure him. I recognized him right away.
He's such a great actor. Why isn't he in more stuff?
He is amazing. And it was really funny because my friend goes, like, the person sitting next to me goes, like, what? I'm like, the little violent one.
Yeah. Bagby.
Signature Danny Boyle flourishes, like, it was much toned down. Would you agree for this?
Oh, yeah. But I think that it kind of went along with the nature of the movie. It was more of like a general sort of crowd pleaser that I liked more with that stuff sort of snuck in rather than being abundant. I don't know if it would have worked as well for the kind of movie that it was. Like, just like shoehorn in a bunch of like weird stuff. It kind of would have been like, all right, like it would have seemed like they were trying too hard to make this movie like weird when it wasn't a weird movie. Like it's high concept, but like when you think about it, it's pretty straightforward.
Yes.
And they did a good job of. I think that was more like Richard Curtis who wrote it, did like all these old romantic comedies. And that's where it really showed that like it kept the focus on like the two of them the whole movie and not about this crazy new world where the Beatles don't exist and Coca-Cola doesn't exist and all that stuff. I thought that was good, that it didn't need a lot of craziness,
I agree, yeah. The like slow motion fall when he gets hit by the bus was very sort of signature Danny Boyle. There were some like angled shots, a lot of angled shots.
Yep.
So I agree. It was just the right amount of touch. It wasn't meant to be an art film.
No.
But I did sort of miss it a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I do like Danny Boyle's style, so.
Yeah, and he's proven too that he's made big movies before, pictures that made a lot of money that weren't, at first glance high concept or straightforward, and he hasn't had to do that for those movies, like which I'm not the world's biggest fan of, but it was like straight weirdness the whole movie, and then it made a lot of money and won Oscars as well.
Yeah,
I do think it worked for this film in particular.
I agree. I think it did. I think sort of from the like filmmaking perspective, I would say my biggest criticism was Himesh Patel.
I didn't mind him. I thought he was fine.
He was serviceable. Poor Lily James was working.
She was great.
So hard.
Yeah.
She was really putting in a lot of effort. And there were a lot of scenes that were just like shots of his face and it was like his face wasn't doing anything.
I think he was like an interesting choice as like kind of like someone who's hasn't been in anything before.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of worked for the movie, for me at least. I thought he had enough charisma where I would kind of like buy that he could almost get famous. But I thought it was really interesting that it was when he gets all big and records all these songs, that the songs they're still cutting or like won't let him do are his own.
Right.
So even if he writes like these great songs, undisputed great songs, which is kind of annoying, but like he can't sneak his own work in there. I thought that was kind of an interesting part of the movie. Like it's like, is it just bad? Is it trying to like make a comment about like creativity in the music industry? There's like a lot of stuff you could kind of like think that means that the movie doesn't really say what it means.
Yeah.
Like his own work kind of becomes like irrelevant, I feel like.
Yeah, and I want to I want to save that like this sort of deeper thematic discussion too for the back half. I definitely think the movie has something to say about the music industry, which is why I wanted to do this with you, because both of us are not only really into music, we're really into up and comers and alternative music and what that says. So we'll save that for later on just the pure cinema stuff. And I also I thought Kate McKinnon was doing, as they say in the movie, a Thursday Night Live sketch. I love they moved Saturday Night Live to Thursday. That's so random.
Nice little touch.
I saw the movie with Stacey and she was like, it should be on Thursday. No one wants to stay home on Saturday.
Yeah.
This is the perfect thing.
Or Friday.
Yeah. So I thought she was just over the top. And
I liked it though, but because it was just kind of like a big middle finger in my opinion. It was it didn't require nuance because it's the people I feel like she's making fun of don't deserve nuance at all. To me, so it's kind of funny.
I mean, yeah, I'll give you that, and I definitely like where she's like, "You're somehow thin but still round."
Yeah,
like,
it's so great.
Where she just tears apart his appearance, like, and I'm like, yeah, that's frankly what that industry is like. Although how Ed Sheeran got there,
I liked him a lot in this movie, and I despise his music, and I think his tattoos are really stupid. So I was really annoyed when I saw him in the trailer and then subsequently found out that he was going to be such a big part of the movie. He was hilarious.
He was great.
He was awesome.
Yeah, he did a good job.
And he's, like, making fun of himself, too. Like, I like anybody who can do that, who can, like, just, like, take their own image and be like, I'm probably, like, a jerk-off in real life. I can do this in a movie. Like,
yeah.
This is good.
Yeah, so
His ringtone was The Shape of You.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
I'm just glad I got that joke. So I want to take this one thing and just dismiss it out of the way, which is what the movie does, which I think is awesome, which is that both Himesh Patel and the people playing his parents, like, they're all English, they all have English accents. The fact that they're ethnically Indian is irrelevant, we just move along.
Because, it's like, need to, like, it's just like he's just an Indian dude.
He's just an English dude, right?
Yeah,
like
I don't feel like they really needed to like look at this guy. Like
I'm just saying they didn't give him an immigrant background. That doesn't play a part at all. His parents are like the most stereotypically like English blokes ever, and
I couldn't believe that was the dad's real voice. Like, it's so English.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
And I just was like, awesome. Like, this is what we were all hoping to get to, where you just hire somebody to play a part.
Yeah. It doesn't matter that he's Indian descent. It's like means nothing.
Yep. And I was like, good for them for just being like, this is irrelevant.
It doesn't matter in the movie.
Yeah.
If the movie's about that, then great. Like, layer on the backstory, whatever, if it's that kind of movie. But this just wasn't.
Right. And I was like, cool. Way to do the right thing and just make a total non-issue of it.
I thought it played into like how like the music is, I'm not like crazy about the Beatles, but like how universal it is. It doesn't matter where you're from, what age you are, that this music kind of like belongs to everybody and everybody likes it, and it kind of brings us something that we all have in common. Mm-hmm. And that's, why that part, this wasn't a part of the story. It's a very universal sort of movie. Yeah. In that way.
Anything else on like the filmmaking stuff you wanna?
Yeah, actually, I saw I read one review before I saw the movie, and they brought up something that I didn't really agree with, where they said it was kind of missing the sort of like third act paranoia that Danny Boyle usually has in his movies. Like if you think about like 28 Days Later, or even like a Trance, I don't know if you saw that. They kind of like devolve at the end into craziness. And I kind of thought this movie did have that. Like there were definitely like dark moments. Like when he's like the best part of the movie I thought was when music wise was Help on the Roof. When he's like going crazy at that point. And I thought that like kind of like punk rock almost performance was really awesome.
So you guys don't know this because I have to edit it all out. But in the movie, there's a scene where they're in the recording studio, this like little recording studio before it becomes famous.
Yeah.
And he's like playing his heart out. And then they're like, wait, stop, train. And like a train goes by.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh God, I can relate. Like that is so much of what you don't hear on this podcast is me. I live in a city, like me having to pause because I'm like, truck backing up, siren. Like,
yeah.
Someone's doing yard work outside right now. The dog's barking. Like, so that like that one scene, I was like, oh yes.
Someone who understands.
This is my life. I thought that was pretty cool.
I thought it definitely had like, they didn't, like, it wasn't a dark film by any stretch of the word, but I think they did a good job of kind of exploring, like, his mental state. Because his first reaction is, like, steal all this stuff, basically. Like, despite what it is about, like, the world not knowing the songs. It's like, you literally are stealing this. And he kind of, like, goes a little crazy. And the movie has, like, again, like, these really cool flourishes of, like, not a descent into madness by any stretch, but...
Yeah.
Like, of, like, a darker... Like, it could have been a way darker movie. Like, I don't know about you, but I was expecting Gavin to be, like, Mark David Chapman the whole movie and, like, kill him or something at the end. Like, I wasn't sure if it was going to go that dark.
Well, so speaking of paranoia, there's a couple of sort of scenes. I mean, I was like, how can you say this movie didn't have paranoia? He has at least 2 dreams of, like, the real, John and Ringo for no random reason.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, wait, who's still alive? Like, I don't think...
Any of the Beatles?
Yeah.
Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr are still alive.
Did Paul pass?
No, he's alive. George Harrison's the only one who's died of, like, natural causes.
Okay. I don't know why Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
And so, he has actually a couple of very paranoid scenes. And so they're, like, playing up that paranoia, and he actually does get caught by 2 people.
That part was so good.
It was so good. It was so unexpected, and I just loved it. Like, it inverted your expectations. So basically what happens is 2 people are like him and somehow still remember the Beatles.
Yeah, they've been, like, following him around, and you're not sure, like, how's this going to, like, affect the movie? Because it's, like, obviously something's up. And like you said, it just, like, blew your mind.
Yeah, and it's great. And basically they just are like, no, we're so happy you stole all the Beatles catalog because the songs don't exist in this world for us to listen to without you putting them out there. And I was like, oh, cool.
Such a cool idea.
Yeah. So then I think anybody who's seen the trailers of this movie was like, how are they going to get out of this?
Yeah.
And almost all of us were expecting, because it starts with an accident, that he's going to wake up from this coma or this dream. And that is not at all what happens.
It just continues going, which I loved.
So, yeah, like it's forever a world without the Beatles, except for what he brings to it. So what were your feelings about the ending?
I thought it was great because you always think with a movie like that, like you said, it's going to either be like a dream or like some kind of coma or something, or what never really happens is just continuing. Yeah, it really kind of like defied what you expected. And I appreciate any movie where it's also not, there wasn't an obnoxious twist either, where it's like they thought they were like real cute for coming up with some crazy idea. It just kind of continued and it was great. I loved it.
Yeah, it was unpredictable. Like, yeah. I didn't see that coming. I think that it was, and it didn't, like you said, it didn't feel false. Like, so, what he decides to do is to say, like, this isn't right. Like, I really, first of all, I don't want to necessarily live this famous life because it's too costly. It comes at too great a cost. Which we had a lot of discussion about at the end of the movie, and I was like, no one wants to be that famous. No one wants to be so famous.
I want to be JY, not
like I was like, I actually think it's like you want to be NPR famous, like maybe a couple people at the grocery store know who you are, or you're like a writer. Like, no one wants to be so famous that the possibility of having a real life goes out the door. I just don't think not no one.
It's
the vast
rare.
Majority of people.
Yeah, people just don't think about it.
Yeah,
I feel like.
Obviously there are some people who desperately want it, but
yeah.
And so and him to say like, no, like this isn't my work. I actually can't take credit or profit. From it. I think was true to the narrative and the character that they set up.
Yeah.
And it didn't strike me as unrealistic. I felt like in the end, that's probably what I would have done. I couldn't have stayed. The lie would have eaten me alive.
Yeah. I also like that he didn't become he didn't become a jerk either, really, because of his fame. I feel like that character was very consistent throughout the whole movie. Like, he definitely was swayed a little bit by that lifestyle, obviously, but I feel like he was kind of true to himself the whole time. I feel like bothered him the whole movie, what he was doing. And I feel like it was just consistent.
Not to mention the fact it was consistent with the fact that, like, again, his parents are just, like, 2 regular English people, like, live in a village, friends with their neighbors. Yep. And they're just, like, never really that impressed by his fame or any of it. Like, they stay really down to earth. And so you can sort of see why he would keep his head about him.
Yeah.
In the face of all of that. Then, for better or for worse for me, because I think I would have liked this movie a whole lot better if it didn't really center on their epic love story. I mean, this was ultimately just like a romantic comedy.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what you get when you get a Richard Curtis movie. Yeah. Like, I don't think they like kind of misled you, and I do think, in fact, that aspect of the story felt believable enough, and they deviated from it enough as well with other characters. Like, his roadie character was in the movie a fair amount, which I didn't expect. That it wasn't boring, I guess. And they did some, like, I mean, so there's a part where he goes to Liverpool to try and figure out how to write some more of these songs, I guess, and to be inspired. Like, that was the purpose of his trip
and
there.
Connect with the material.
Yeah, because I want to get to that later, but so he shows up she shows up at his hotel. I forget how it happens. She comes to the hotel. They go out to dinner. They drink a lot. And they end up almost fooling around at that point. And I thought that was a very realistic scene. I really liked that. I thought that it was a PG-13ified movie, obviously, but it felt very real. And I kind of liked that it was a big love story, but it didn't hit like the beats you would expect it to. And I thought that was like a very well done scene.
Yeah,
in the context of the movie.
And I actually like, so there's a little bit of sort of gender inversion, like, she's the one who's the long-suffering friend who's been in love with him this whole time.
Yeah.
Which usually it's like, and she's the one who complains about being friend-zoned,
Yeah.
like, I guess I just thought, like, because, like, she has this big heartbreaking moment where she comes to him and she's like, why? Why was I in the friend zone? Like, why were we never a possibility? And he never answers her. And that's where I'm like, some of the deeper emotional moments like that, she gave it everything she had, and Himesh Patel just kind of stood there.
Yeah.
And didn't really do anything. And so you're like, it's never clear why she was, he never answers her. And I'm like, I feel like we as the audience kind of need that answer as well. Like,
yeah, I agree with you there. There definitely wasn't like a come to Jesus moment for him. Obviously at the end when he professes that he loves her, that was one part where I kind of agree. That didn't really feel all that earned, But enough of the movie was good that it didn't matter to me overall. But I did notice that he doesn't have a moment where he's like, he's like, I've been in love with this girl the whole time and I just didn't know it. There wasn't a moment really like that.
No, there wasn't. And it just felt like, I don't know. It just didn't come off that great as a love story to me, because I was like, so the reason, okay, so like every sort of romantic comedy has to have the reason why they can't get together.
Yeah.
Right? And this one had one, but they never told you what it was. So you're like, why weren't they together? Like,
yeah.
Like they never give it to you, and it's just very bizarre. And I'm like, why was that? Yeah. So, but like ultimately I came out of a movie and I was like, a little bit like Rocket Man, actually, where I was like, well, I did this for the podcast, so I kind of had to stay hyper aware and analytical the whole time. And I was like, I really just wanted to not have to do that. Like, this isn't a movie that, like, this is a movie that's like, we're never going to explain anything, which is great because the explanations always end up being stupid. Like, turn off your brain and just, like, come along for the ride.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, like, it really lent itself to that. It didn't lend itself to, like, any analytical part, which we started to pick apart later. We're like, first of all, wouldn't England and everywhere else be super crowded because, like, none of these people had died of lung cancer?
Yeah, right?
Like, plus then Stacey's like, and the founding of America, like, do we really have LA? Like, because, like, one of our major calf crops you've just eliminated. Yeah. So like it's like, okay, once you start to go down that path, like the movie doesn't hang together at all.
But what I liked about it is when movies struggle to seem so bulletproof with that kind of stuff, when it's earned to have people pick it apart. With this, it's just like, it was a true just like go with it situation. There wasn't any logic set up in the world of the movie, you know what I mean? Where they were trying to be hyper realistic about it. And I think that ended up making it was strictly just for jokes.
Yep.
And, it was like a true, like, who cares situation, And it's like, it's one where it was like fun to think of that stuff. It didn't make the movie worse. And it was like a funny, just because my wife, who I saw it with, we did the same thing, but it was like more like just fun.
Okay.
Instead of like, oh man, yeah, this is a real problem now for me.
Fair enough. So moving into some of the like, the movie seems to hammer home a very interesting central message, which is one I don't respond to particularly well, which is that 'tis better to not achieve fame or greatness and live a long, healthy life than to achieve fame and greatness and die young.
Oh, I definitely agree with that.
I figured you would, which is why we're an interesting pairing for this podcast, actually.
Because I was a little worried. So the movie starts with him working at, I guess it's like a Costco type place in England. And he's got like a boss he's like, customers like you, but like I don't like you. And he like lists all these reasons why he doesn't like him. But he's like, but we'll give you like a full-time position here. And he's like, oh yeah, like no. And I was like worried, is this gonna be one of those movies where it like treats anyone who like does that job as like a schmuck, basically? And you know, because like people would kill for a full-time job like that. That's like not bad.
Yeah.
And I think the movie moved away from that kind of sentiment, like where, I mean, it came up once again, but I feel like it made sense where she's like, if you go back to teaching, like then you're failing, like, or whatever.
Well, she basically says you can have, you know, a job that doesn't take a lot of your, you know, like creative energy. Yeah. Because then you can devote it to your music. If you do teaching, which, you know, will take all of your creative energy to focus on your kids, then you can't do music. And like, it was really interesting. Like I had this discussion once a long time ago with my sister where she was like, I'm just taking a bunch of retail jobs, like, am I making a mistake? Should I like focus on my career? And I was like, as long as you're writing, you should that's exactly what you should do. You should, if you take a career there, you won't have any mental energy left for creative pursuits. So like, why do that?
Yeah. For our listeners, I just want to get this on the record. Retail jobs are fun and nothing to be ashamed of.
They are not. But so like, you sort of have the two of us, like me, who's the very like super ambitious, career focused one, and you who are like, I married that, so I don't have to be it myself.
Yeah. If I could be in sitting in a nice like cabin style spot on the beach at like 78 or whatever, man, that's just it.
Yeah.
I love that sequence. Now, like, I thought, like, I was going to be annoyed by it when it started. I was like, oh, here's old John Lennon who lived. It was good. It was pretty poignant. I don't know. The makeup, now that you say that, like, now that I know it was him. But I didn't know it was him before.
No, it's good. I think for me...
I was rooked.
Yeah, I was just like, you're kidding, though, right? Like, I just was like... And it's a fair choice, but it's an individual one. And I definitely think there's many, many, many of us who would be like, no, I'd rather be like, I'd rather have made the music of the Beatles.
But I think that was like in keeping with that character as well, because one of the lessons I feel like he learns is that what he's ultimately thinks he's after in the beginning isn't, you know, he does end up teaching and being like, he learns that he kind of needed that old John Lennon to tell him the facts of life, basically, for him. I think that character definitely, it was just not for him, and he needed to learn that in the movie.
Well, I mean, but then again, what the movie says, and this is, you know, circling back to where we started this discussion, the movie basically presents the idea that sort of the cream always rises to the top.
Yeah.
Right? Like, those who can truly write a good song will make it in the music industry. And then the flip side being, he just didn't have what it took, right?
Yeah.
He just simply didn't have the talent. Like, he wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
Once he had the right material, he did get famous.
Yeah.
As part of my sort of research for the film, I read an article in Vox that I'll post to the show notes where they were like, the movie makes kind of a couple big assumptions, which in the article they disagreed with. One, that music is timeless. Mm-hmm. So you're like, you basically have him playing these 60s hits in...
Yeah, plunking it down in the present day, which I thought was an interesting point.
And everybody still loves the songs. And that fame is a matter of talent and talent alone.
Which just isn't true.
Which isn't true, But I guess here's how I would talk about it, since we've just had, like, you know, we had Bohemian Rhapsody. That movie was terrible.
Sorry.
But back to Freddie Mercury. Yeah. I'm like, I think that there is, in fact, a level of talent that is undeniable.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think there's a world where you can have a voice like Freddie Mercury and you won't make it.
Yeah.
Like, okay, maybe if you're, like, buried in some, like, extreme poverty and you die young. But I'm just, like, given, like, the fact that you can sing and get out there, like, there's like, the people, I do think there are the people who become famous because their talent is so huge. Mm-hmm. It's undeniable.
Yeah.
But I think there's another level of talent that just really relied on timing, frankly, the person probably being very attractive, luck, that you're like, I mean, like, you know, how many actors do we complain about who like, frankly, repeatedly give bad performances? And you're like, there's so many talented people in this world. Why did this person get to be a star?
Well, I think the movie kind of, like, addressed that because the nobody responds to the Beatles songs when he's going to these pubs and playing them. It's when people in the industry see or hear it, and they're like, this is good. But people don't respond to it right off the bat when it's just him. And I thought that was such a cool thing to do, you know, because it was like him playing his own stuff. Like, he's like, that was one of the best scenes. I think he's just in a bar or something playing. I forget which one it is. I think it's like Let It Be. It was like the first one he did. I don't remember, but
no, he does it for his parents, and his parents just, like, are totally uninterested.
I thought they did, like, a cut where it was like him then playing it at a bar, but whatever. It was just so kind of cool that it's just like, it kind of, like what you said, it drives home that just because you're like, this is dropped into your lap, that you have all these songs that only you remember, like, you know, it takes some more, I don't know, tipping the scales for him to, like, get popular. You know, it's not until people, like, in the industry notice him or whatever, and they're like, oh, this is really good, and then it becomes big, you know? Yeah. It was kind of interesting.
And so one thing about Himesh Patel, I will say, and you said it earlier, so I'll kind of climb onto that, is just he carried that part off. Like, his performances were believable.
So phenomenal.
He's a good singer. Like, I had no problem with that. So yeah, but you know, it's like, as much as I personally hate Journey, like, those songs suddenly got repopularized. Like, I was thinking of, like, think how many people today, like, actually cover songs from the 60s. I was just, like, listening to the Phil Collins cover of You Can't Hurry Love the other day. Like, people still sing Respect. People still sing
anything by
the disco
Bob
hit.
Dylan, I feel like
is covered all the time. Like, so I'm like, no, I actually didn't have an issue with the fact that, like, the Beatles songs would be popular today.
That's just, like, another thing. Like, you can't, like, again, it goes back to, you can't, with this kind of movie, you kind of have to let that notion go. You know, like, that also, like, a lot of these bands wouldn't exist and all that stuff. You just kind of just got to go along with the movie.
Yeah, I guess I disagree with you.
It is an interesting thing to think about, but I just think that, I don't think that they needed to address that, I guess is what I mean.
Right. I don't necessarily think they need to address it, but, like, we don't have to, like, confine ourselves to, like, just what happened in the movies. So, like,
oh no, but I just need to complain about it, I guess. Like, it's more.
I'm like, we can address it and think about, like, is it really realistic for this, like, little nobody guy in England to have the Beatles catalog? And I'm like, and I guess what I'm saying is, yeah, but it would have to be the Beatles.
Yeah.
I don't even think it could have been the Kinks. Like,
no.
You know what I mean? Like, it would have to be the people who are in that, like, 0.001% of talent.
Yeah.
For it to carry off as, like, yes, people will love these songs.
Yeah, no matter what.
Forever.
Yeah.
Although one of my friends brought up, like, he's like, it's funny they didn't do Imagine.
I'd say, okay, that brings me to an interesting point, is, like, there were, I'm not very familiar with the Beatles, like, catalog. There were no songs that I did not know in this movie, and they did not deviate from the hits at all.
Well, and so
there's zero like deep cuts. From the Beatles. What do they have, like 10 albums or something? And like,
but like he has to remember how they go in all the lyrics. So like,
I guess that makes
to me
sense.
that I was like, he's not going to know the deep cuts. I also thought like it was funny for me because I notoriously like I don't really get the Beatles. Like I'm not a huge fan either. Like I
they're good. This is kind of where it begins and ends for me.
But I do notice. I took one of those silly online quizzes, like, you're good, go ahead. I took one of those silly online quizzes where you have to be like, who wrote this Beatles song, Paul or John? And I literally just was like, if I liked the song, I guessed Paul wrote it. And my score I'm not a Beatles fan. I don't know them that well. Like, my score was like 90% correct. Because I'm like, oh, really? And so it was like the whole John Lennon mystique. I'm like, but apparently I only like Paul McCartney. And I noticed, like, yesterday, Here Comes the Sun, Hard Day's Night. Like, I was like, the movie was definitely very skewed towards the Paul songs. Hey Jude. So I feel like, the movie did have an optimistic message about the music industry in terms of, like, talent coming through.
And they were
I don't know where that leaves us with Ed Sheeran.
They were all supposed, like, I feel like the scene I really liked was when, and I thought this was a great example of the paranoia in the movie too, was when he's at the meeting to decide on the album.
Oh.
And that was great. And like, Sgt. Pepper's? What is that? Like, the White Album? that whole scene.
And they were like, you can't say that anymore.
It's like, it's a little bit of a diversity issue. But like that part when they unveil their idea, the one man only, I think like his face when he is like, what have I done?
Yeah.
That's so good. And it's like not subtle at all, but it's so good.
So Lamorne Morris, probably best known for being on New Guy, plays the sort of head of marketing who like leads that meeting. And for just like a bit role and a bit scene, like, you can see like Adam like miming, like knocked it out of the park. He just absolutely like a memorable, like one of those like, I'm predicting like put him on the map, like some more stuff's gonna come his way because he just nailed that scene. Yeah. He was so perfect,
especially for something I feel like anyone could have phoned that in.
Yeah, exactly.
But he made that scene great, and I feel like it seemed so real too. And he was saying stuff that was clearly so exaggerated. But I feel like we've all, even in my meeting-proof job, like we've all had those moments of like is this real? Like is this like a bit like you're doing right now? Like no, it's like real life, and it was so great.
Yeah, to Kate McKinnon's just like playing an SNL character the whole time. Like he sold it. Yeah. He was funny and right and believable, and he just nailed it.
I think she was great in the movie, though. Like, I think that a blunt instrument is, again, what the people she's making fun of deserve, and it definitely was, like, sketchish, but it's like when she's, like, doing yoga and talking to him, that's so funny.
Yes.
What a winner.
Some from English Pot Shots at LA. Yeah. Okay, so we are coming to the end of our time. Any final thoughts or like putting it all together for a social impact score?
Yeah, I think we got it all.
Okay, so this is just a very lighthearted movie. It doesn't register. It purposefully like subverts going into deep thoughts. I personally don't take to a message about like, no, give up all the fame and success and glory for a nice simple job in a nice simple town with a nice simple girl and have a couple kids. Like that's not a message that resonates with me particularly well, but
for anyone that knows you, it was accurate.
So I struggle. I guess I will just middle of the road this.
We do it out of 10.
Yeah, so I'll give it a 5. Like I said, I think honestly, like the biggest success was just be like, this guy's Indian and we're never going to talk about it. Like he's actually English. That's fine.
I never even thought about that until
that's
today.
why. Like, it's so good.
Yeah.
It's like so like it was so like we've won.
Doesn't matter.
We don't. It doesn't matter. This is just who we cast in the role, and it's a non-issue. I really think Lily James has proven herself in some.
She was very good in that movie.
Yeah, and
very good.
It's always hard to play the long-suffering.
Here's another thing we didn't touch on. So when the trailer came out, I thought they were doing like have you seen pictures of her at, like, premieres and stuff? She's like very striking. And I thought they were like kind of uglying her up for the movie, and it did not come off that way, like in the movie.
Okay.
It's like she seemed like they didn't like, you know, because they show her in the trailer, she's like in glasses in every scene in the trailer and stuff like that. It's like, it looked like somebody marketing the movie was trying to do that, and like that would be the bit for the whole movie, and it just wasn't. I thought that was like, I was kind of like relieved.
Yeah.
So it's like, that annoys me so much.
Well, and then it says it's like, oh, well, she wears glasses, so obviously she's ugly.
Glasses and curly hair, teacher, nerd, get out of here.
Exactly.
Next.
Yeah. So what would you give it?
I'm going to have to go a little higher after this discussion. I'm going to do a nice 7.
Wow, that is high.
I think it's a nice addition to the Danny Boyle catalog.
Okay.
Definitely. And I think that it kind of is like a sneaky movie. On, like, based on what we've talked about. Like, I think it sneaks a lot of these kind of ideas in there that would normally either be too heavy-handed or not get into something. It was like a perfect balance.
Fair enough.
And I also, like I said, expected to despise it.
Yes.
It was really, really good.
I did too. And I'm like, I will give it credit for that. Like, I mean, like, I actively wanted to dislike it while I was watching it. I was like, I just can't. I'm kind of charmed. Like,
I just let it go. The first, and another thing, I guess we didn't talk about this either. Like, at the beginning, I didn't like it, but then they only do the like the Beatles world, we'll call it, where the Beatles are real. That's like 5 to 7 minutes of the movie. And then they just go, like, from there on. And it's very easy to, like, they didn't, like, I guess I kind of expected, like, 25 minutes of, like,
yeah. First,
like, you know, and they just, like, nope, here's the plot, here are these characters, he's kind of a bumbling musician, she's in love with him, he's not in love with her, boom, hit by a bus. Let's get this movie started. And that really worked. So, yeah it was good.
All right, recommendations for the week?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
I'm going to go with, I always do movies and TV shows, so I'll do that today. Deadwood just premiered a movie, making it the best show ever made. Conclusion it deserved. And movie Oblivion with Tom Cruise. Great movie. So
I am going to recommend, if you haven't caught up, I think it's just 3 episodes. But in terms of, like, bizarre covers, and that's all I'm going to say because I actually don't want to spoil this. If you haven't seen the Miley Cyrus episode of Black Mirror, you see it and then figure out what's going on and you will be very surprised, and it is very fun. So it sort of speaks to how a song can be re-engineered for different times.
All right.
And that's all I'm going to say about that. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Movies That Matter. We could always use some more reviews on iTunes. So you may have noticed our website has changed. We have finally made the transition. Hopefully no one has had any service disruptions. All the same links are there. The store is a little bit more prominent, so please buy a t-shirt. Support us. And now you can just play an episode right from the homepage, share it really easily. Like, it's been a journey doing this, and hopefully you guys like it. And I'm sure almost none of you actually go to the website, but I actually can see that some of you do. So I hope you feel like we've made the user experience a lot easier for you. That's why I did this, like, to really help get the podcast out there. So tell us what you think. Leave a comment on our Facebook page or on Twitter with our tag @MoviesMatterPod, and check Twitter on alternate Thursdays to find out what movie we're overanalyzing next. And remember, movies matter.
And so do you.
We'll see you next time.